Well, I can tell you that I don't trust you.
Well, then you have impeccable instincts.
If you don't leave now, we'll die together.
I can think of worse ways to go.
The numbers are moving.
Okay.
Well, Grandma, what did you think of Spectre, The Return of James Bond?
Well, I've been a fan of the James Bond films ever since they started with Dr. No and Sean Connery and
Yeah.
all of those adventures. And whenever they start up that James Bond theme, you know, at the beginning, I get excited. It's interesting. So something exciting is going to happen. And it did. This film was very interesting in all of the aspects that it brought in. I've been a fan of Daniel Craig as James Bond. I think he does a very good job as our 007 hero. Another thing I like about all the James Bond films, particularly the latest ones, is we get to go to all these exotic places in the world.
Always go to exotic places
Always.
in James Bond movies. It's not just the recent
Oh,
ones.
well, okay. But that is one thing, you know. Here I am sitting
That's part of it being a James Bond movie, is you go to exotic places.
Here I am sitting in my comfortable theater, you know, eating my popcorn and getting to visit all of these wonderful locales. And they don't fake it. They really do go to exotic locales
Yes, they do.
to film these films. And I think that adds, at least for me, it adds to the excitement. I like to see all of these, even though in some of the instances it's pretty far-fetched, you know, that they could really race down these streets or across the rooftops and stuff like they do with nobody noticing, you know, where are all the people who normally are here. But in a James Bond film, particularly, you go in with a suspension of disbelief. Okay, whatever it is that they are going to do, you know, I accept that. And James himself, he's very hardy, you know, with all of the physical trauma that he undergoes in the fights with all the bad guys and stuff. He's up and ready for the next one.
How would you compare it to the other ones if you needed to compare it?
As
How was
far
it?
as the film goes, I think it was a little longer than it needed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that's a criticism or just an observation. You know, it could have, the plot could have gone forward without quite so many physical confrontations, you know, that James was put through. But of course, that's part of the enjoyment of a 007 movie, is, you know, that he somehow is able to outfigure and outmaneuver and outfight and outthink all of the bad guys. And so it was very, very good, I thought. A little bit overlong. But did you think it was a little overlong? What did you think?
A little bit. Again, I think that the basics of the plot were pretty simple, and they could have been done in a shorter film. I'd say that I would recommend it, but not perhaps for the same reasons that you cite. And again,
Well, why would you recommend it then, if you don't?
well, again, I think that the filmmaking in this was just really outstanding.
Oh my! Yes. Ooh.
However, I think that the plot was quite poorly done. The tone and such for this movie, I think, completely mismatched James Bond. It didn't work, I don't think, at all for James Bond. Having said that, the quality of that filmmaking was really, really outstanding, and it's really interesting to watch. But again, it just doesn't fit, I don't think, James Bond at all. It's almost like they had a James Bond checklist. They had your fancy car, they had some gadgets, they had a pretty girl, they had a big bruiser bad guy to beat him up a few times.
Several times.
And they had a sadistic bad guy. And
they also had the love interest and
well, I said they had the pretty girl.
A few, a few sexy scenes, you know, little.
Well, again, they had the checklist, but they didn't do any of them very well. Again, just because, again, I don't think that the style of the film matched that at all.
Wasn't
again,
cool enough. Wasn't.
It was
slick enough.
It's hard to describe. I mean, the photography and the direction and
all the special
everything.
Effects.
Well, there weren't actually that many special effects, but again, all of that was just really, really well done, and it made for a really stylish movie, a very sort of slick, good-looking movie. But it didn't. In a lot of ways, and this goes back to the script, I guess. But again, it took all the fun out of being a spy in a way. It was very, very dark and glum, and the story was such that you had sort of the basics of the story, but you didn't know necessarily why they were in any particular place or where they were, what they were doing there. I didn't quite get that from the way they did it. I mean,
the transitions from place to place.
Yeah, again, that has to do with, again, the script. But again, and again, the dialogue I thought was not snappy at all, not interesting. There were these different points in the movie where I was thinking, well, in a James Bond movie they would say this, in a James Bond movie they would say that, and they didn't do it, and it was just sort of laid flat, and it wasn't very interesting. But again, I thought it was, you might call it an interesting failure, because again, I thought it was very, very interesting, and I'm glad I went to it. But is it a particularly good movie? Probably not.
And among the other James Bond movies,
it doesn't work well.
It would not be the top one.
No,
it would not be the top one by any means.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Now, that's not to say it needs to be a stereotypical James Bond movie. It doesn't need to be that. It could be different. But this, I don't think, quite worked.
Well, being
as
a
film,
stereotypical Bond movie wouldn't be so bad, because
maybe not.
the stereotype is pretty good, pretty classy.
So, well, Grandma, how would you wind it up? What would your final?
I enjoyed it thoroughly.
review?
I'm a James Bond fan, and I was glad to see the good guys win once again, largely due to the efforts of 007. Yes.
Okay.
Thumbs up.
Well, again, I would recommend it, but again, it's an interesting failure in a way.
Recommend, but no thumbs.
Yes, a
Okay.
very interesting film, though.
Okay.
Okay. Thank
We'll see you next time, James Bond.
you. Okay, thank you, Grandma.